Ohio Star quilt block. And so this is block 5 in our series. And we're going to make this a little more traditional, I would say. So there are ways to make the quilt blocks that make it a little bit more efficient. Um, that way may waste a little bit more fabric, but just make your life a lot easier. So we're going to go back to the basics. And so the basics said that we cut this a certain way, and we'll talk about that as we go. So I'm using 3 colors. I'm using this gorgeous orange and yellow print. I am using my background fabric, which is this gray, and then I am using this blue fabric, and it has like little bursts, if you will, like fireworks or something, some sort of design. And so to make the block, these are the measurements we need. So this block comes from the Badass Quilter Society, and it's a free pattern from Vintage Fabric Studio. So in order to get started, there are a couple things that we need. And I'm going to make sure I get the pieces right. So this is the center, and this is a 4 by 3 1/4 inch block, and it's just one of these. We need 4 blocks that are 4 inches square, and they are cut in half on the diagonal like that. We have the orange. This will go around the edge of this, and this is also 4 inches square, and we cut this on the diagonal. And last but not least, we have our background. These blocks here are going in the corners, and these are 3 1/2. They're 3 1/2 inch squares. I had to pay attention to that. Yeah, do the measurements. 3 1/2 inch squares. There's 4 of these. And then there's one 7 1/4 inch block that we cut along both diagonals to create those pieces. So this is everything that we need. Now let's look at what this is going to look like. This is going to be the center of the block. We're creating a square and a square. So we're going to have these 2 go here, and then we'll add these 2, and they're going to create a unit that looks like this. Let me move this away from my machine a little bit. Then from there, we're going to create flying geese, and we're not going to do it the traditional method. We're going to use the method that they had. And these will go like this. And then these will be the points for the star. Okay, so almost like a puzzle piece, this will go together. And you can see the star forms, and then these are just the corners. Okay, and we're going to sew these together in units so that everything will come together. But this is how this will look. Now, I have created other videos where we've made those flying geese a little different, but we're going to follow the method that they had, and we're going to do it this way, which is a little bit more old school, and the way that I traditionally learned how to make the flying geese block, how to make the square in the square, which is here, and that's fine. So we'll push all these over to the side. We don't even need to keep those together. And we'll deal with this piece first. I need to just get that to be a little flatter for me. The iron is probably not on. There it is. So this block, I'm going to fold it in half because it is easier with these triangles to find the centers and to start with the centers. That way you have an even distribution on both sides because there will be some spillover with this. So I'm just going to finger press and then clip that just to help with the crease. And then I'm going to do the same with these triangles. Now you need to be careful with these, and this is the reason why people don't do this method as much anymore. This is a square, and when you cut on the diagonal, this is the bias. So this diagonal line can be very stretchy. So you do want to handle this with care because if you do a lot of pulling, you will stretch this out a little bit. And we don't necessarily want to do that. So we're taking each one of these and we're folding it on the bias. And I'm just clipping that corner after I finger press it, just so that I can have that center crease. I said on the corner of where I creased it. So this is the corner I'm referring to. And I'm just lining those points up down here and just finger pressing here. Okay. So once that's done, I'm going to open this up and I can see where those points are, those corners, and I'm going to line this up. The centers, I should say. I keep saying corners. The centers. And I'm going to line that up. And you see how there's a little bit over for those points. I'll turn this around because I can see it a little bit easier. And I'm just lining up those centers. Okay. We're going to sew 1/4 inch on either side, and then we're going to do the same thing on this side. Be careful not to pull your fabric because remember the triangle is on the bias. It's on the stretchiest side of that fabric. Okay. And we'll cut those extra strings. So we have our 2 seams and we can open this up and it looks like this. We can press towards the triangles if we prefer, or we can press towards the square. That's totally up to you, or you can press it open. I like the way that it presses toward the square better, so I'm going to press it that way. So I'm going to press toward the dark. But for yours, this made the center maybe light. Let me flip it over and just make sure those 2 seams are nice and flat. Okay, so then it will look like this. Now I'm going to fold, and I could cut these off if I choose by lining up the edge of the blue square with the edge of my ruler or my line, and I can just cut those little wings off. Sometimes I leave them on there, but just for the sake of the video, we'll cut those off. We don't want to cut the blue. We just want to cut those points. Okay, so now they'll look like this. Then what we'll do is fold these in half, lining up the blues. And again, we'll pinch that center clip and then turn this over and do the same thing, lining up the seams. And I'm finger pressing. And I'm just going to clip it for a second. Now I can open this up. See where that little piece is for the center. Open this one up. Line those two centers up. And clip. Do the same thing for the other side. And the finger press helps us to see it. And I can see it a lot better than maybe you can on camera. But I'm just taking the time to line up those two folds. Okay. And again, you should have excess past those seams. And we'll take it back to our machine. Everything is lined up. And we're going to stitch 1/4 of an inch. And I'm just really trying to make sure that everything lines up the way it should. And again, remember, the triangles are on the bias, so you don't want to stretch them as much as possible. My tension is off. Okay. So again, you can see those wings that are there, which is fine. Let's cut off the extra thread. And then we can press these open. If you choose, you can press those in. That's up to you. Again, I don't want to do a whole lot of pulling and pressing with the iron, so I'm not ironing, I'm pressing because I really don't want to distort. And then we have what's called the square in a square. I have all these little dog ears, but I'm going to trim this block up. So while I trim the block up, that will help me to get rid of the dog ears. Oops. And let me use my ruler the right way. So I'm just lining everything up. And we can cut those off. So there should be some extra fabric up in here, because when you attach this to the rest of the other units, you want to make sure that you have a point. So that should be about 1/4 of an inch. So we're going to set this aside, and we're going to get started with our side units. So to do our flying geese, we're going to take these 2 units, this unit, and then these 2 units to create those flying geese. I want to make sure that I have a point for this. So the star point is going to look like this. And I want these to line up, and I want the overlap to go here, because that's where I will get at least 1/4 inch, rather than to do it like this. And then that point is right there at the seam. I don't want the point at the seam. So I want to make sure that I'm lining it up like this, so that I have some excess down here. So when I line these up, remember, not a lot of pulling because of that. And you can see it over here. See how that blue is up at the top, at the peak. And we're going to sew these. And this is going to happen for all these units on both sides, so we can get all of the units done. But I wanted to show you what that looked like, because at first it looks a little confusing, and I was like, yeah, let me make sure I'm doing this right. And again, take your time, because this is stretchy on that bias. Line everything up. Oops, take it back, and let's stitch. So the top of your background is where that excess is going to be. The flat side is what lines up with your points. And we're taking our time. Doesn't matter which side we do this on, because we're going to come back and do the same thing on the other side. And again, this is not the traditional way. This is not the new way for making flying geese. This is more traditional. And folks, of course, found easier ways, more efficient ways, and ways that wouldn't necessarily create all that stretch from the bias. And that's why we mark and we make them all at one time, and all the other ways that we make them, which is fine, but this is the old way. And there's nothing wrong with an old way. And I like doing it this way, because sometimes if I'm only making one block, I don't want to have to think. If I'm making more than one block, if I'm going to make the Ohio Star for the whole quilt, so I need 10, 12 of them, I might use the new way of making the flying geese, because I can make at least 4 at one time. And then I wouldn't have to do it this way. Oh, I see what it is. My bobbin is loose. I was like, why is my tension off? And I can see why my tension is off, because my bobbin is not tight. There we go. So these are all chained together. And then what we're going to do is open this up and press it. And we can press so that it goes this way, or we can press so that it goes back. That's up to you. Again, you don't want to do a whole lot of mushing with your iron because there's a lot of bias. It will distort your block just a little bit, and it could throw your measurements off. Okay, so it'll look like this on one side, and then what we'll do is we're going to come in and do the other side. Now, when I'm doing the opposite side, this is where it's really important to make sure everything's lined up, because either I have to go this way and flip it upside down, so I'd have to go like this, or I would have to go from here. But either way, I'm going to make sure that that's right. And again, take your time because you are on the bias and you don't want to pull your thread. I can tell it sounds different already because you fixed that issue. Line that up. You should have some overhang up top. And then I'm being very careful to guide with this hand. So I'm just holding it steady and I'm not pressing down so that it's pulling, because it'll bow and I don't want that bow. So the flying geese are what's going to give us the points for our stars. And the great thing is that this is almost together. So again, all chained, and let's separate them, and we'll press and trim. And so when you open it up, see how that bottom has that down at the bottom to help with that point. So it'll look like that. And we have three more to go. So the great thing about making blocks is that you can mix your blocks to create any type of pattern that you like or layout that you like. So you could make all the same block. You could have 2 different blocks. You could have 12 different blocks, depending on the size of your quilt. It is totally up to you. We have, I think this is block 5. So we have 5 blocks that'll be finished after today. And we have approximately 7 to 15 more to go, depending on how many blocks I decide to do. I'm actually running this fabric right here, so when this fabric runs out, that's when those blocks will stop. And it doesn't mean that I can't make more blocks out of other fabric, but that's what will be made out of this. So now you have the flying geese unit. We're going to straighten up that edge if it needs it and clip off those triangles. And we can also do this as well, just to get rid of those. You don't need the extra bulk. And I just like this edge, I want to make sure is straight. And that's why I'm taking the time to use this with that edge. They should be straight if you didn't do a lot of pulling. And I don't have to use it for these corners. This is just will reduce the bulk. If they're a little off, then I may want to rethink what I did to see if that's going to work. That one I may want to seam rip. But I think I can make it work. So I do want to check also if I use my ruler at a 1/4 inch, I want to make sure that I can still see that point. So if I take this, it's a little wonky, but if I line this up right to the 1/4 inch, if I can get this without compromising that 1/4 inch, I'm not worried about the excess that I cut off. So it'll look like that. Okay. So it may have been a little pulling. So just so we come back to revisit the block a little bit, let's throw those scraps away. This is the center, square and a square. And right now, this will look like this. Okay. And then we have these pieces that are going to go in the corner. We didn't cut off 2 of our edges. Let me cut those off. Because I'll forget. So busy worrying about the bottom, I didn't worry about those ears, the little ears. Okay. So this is the whole star. As I've said in other blocks that I've created, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, which creates a 9 patch. So when we create a 9 patch, I take this end over this way and over this way, and I am going to stitch them all together. I line these up. If it's a little off, I want it on the ends, because then when I go to trim the blocks up, it'll be on the end that will get trimmed off. For these, I want my points to be lined up. And I'm going to clip. So if it's a little off, which is fine, it'll get caught in the seam. I do want to make sure that it's right where it should be, and that if I can get this to cross right over that seam, like it's a little X, I can make that happen. Okay. And that'll give me that point. So that's the goal that I'm looking for when I put these together. I want this to go on this side. And this is a little out of order just because of the way that I pulled it, and that's fine. Oops. Because I'm still going to lay them out after I press them. And then let's do this side. And again, this is the important part, to line those points up. And again, you can see that right in there. Clip it so that when I start sewing, they will be together. I'm taking my time when I get to that point, making sure that I go right where I want it to go to guarantee that I have that point. And if I have to pull it out, I'll pull it out, but I want to see those points point. So those points are not cut off. Okay. I'm going to press these this way. I'll press these. I want to press these open. I may want to press these open. There's a lot of bulk with this and then this, that if I press these open, it at least distributes the bulk. So I think I'm going to press them open, and that'll reduce the bulk. Normally I would press to one side so that I could nest the seams, but I just have to match the seams up. So that means that I can open up all the seams when I do this. Okay, so I press those seams open, and then it lays nice and flat like that. And we'll do the same thing for this one. It looks like I did not do one of those, so I do need to go back and finish that. That's why I said I went out of order, and I forgot to do a side of the points, a corner. Okay. And so this one looks like this. So I need to finish the other unit, but let's go ahead and attach. And again, remember, I'm going to line up those points. And it's more important to line those points up. If I need to stretch anything, I want to stretch it, but I want the points to point, because that's what makes the star. These seams, I'm going to line those up. and clip. And if everything measures the way it's supposed to, everything was cut, all your seams were 1/4 inch, everything should line up the way that you need it to line up. And we'll take this to the machine, even though we didn't do that other side yet. Just doing a little bit of a back stitch. It's not the end of the world if you don't back stitch. Just helps it to not come apart if you're doing a little bit too much pulling. I'm lifting my foot up because there's a lot of bulk with all the fabric, and I want to make sure that it doesn't push my seam back because that'll twist the seam. Okay. And again, if for some reason something didn't line up and I feel some kind of way, I can take that out. But here we are, that point pointed. We have our points for our star, and it's lined up over here. So we can press that in a minute, but you can see how that's coming together so far. And we just have to have the bottom done, and we'll add this to this piece. We'll press this and then add this to the bottom to finish our star. The Ohio star is one of my favorites. There are a lot of variations. This is a variation of it. Because sometimes when people do the Ohio star, it will look more like this way. So it'll look like that. And that would be on point for this. Mine is going this way. So it just looks kind of like a sawtooth star. Let's open this up and press those seams. And then we'll get that last side attached. So the first couple blocks that I've done are really easy blocks. We have not done anything really difficult. There are some more complicated ones. There are some that require applique, paper piecing to make the blocks. It just depends when you are working on blocks, like what techniques you want to work on. This is the bottom or the top. We're going to flip this over and do the same thing that we did before. We're going to line up our points. And again, the care and concern that you take to do this helps at the end to hopefully guarantee you can still mess up, but you'll be closer to getting those points pointy if you take the time. If you rush, you get what you get. If you're not paying attention to detail, you get what you get. Everything is all clipped up, and we can take it back to our machine and stitch this last side. This one might not hit those points the way that I want them to. And that's okay. I will live. Let me see. So little off. I still have a point, but I can see just a little bit more orange than I wanted to. The corners work. You're not going to be able to see that difference. And let me press it. If it were really off, I would take it out. But it's not off enough to do that, so I'm going to leave it as is. I opened up my other seams, so I'm going to open up these and give it a press. All right, let's turn this around. Thank you for joining the live today. Please make sure that you subscribe and like the live. Lets me know that people are out there and they actually like or find what I'm doing valuable as I'm trying to think about the content that I provide on this page. There we go with that. And we'll turn this over. And again, when you press on the back, sometimes your fabric will fold just a little bit over at the seam. So here is our opportunity to kind of straighten that out. I could use a little bit of starch if I need, but I should be able to get those seams as flat as possible. Okay, and then here is the finished star. So this block is finished. And again, if there is some sizing up that needs to be done, you would use your 12.5-inch ruler to do that. You just need to be careful. And here's where I run into the problem. And I may go back and adjust that. I don't have enough of a 1/4 inch here. And I don't have enough of a 1/4 inch right here. So when my seams go, I'm going to lose a little bit of the point. So if that bothers me, then I'll just go back in and add a different square right in here and right in here. Because those are the only two places. Everybody else has a 1/4 inch. But I can go back in and just add a different square, or I can just pull it just a little bit that it might be able to do that for me. But I'll make that decision when it comes to it. It's a sampler, and I might not worry about those points because every point may not point, and I might be okay with that. But this is the finished block, and that is number 5. So stay tuned because we at least have 7 more to go unless we decide to do 20. But there are plenty of quilt blocks that you can use, and we do want to explore as many as possible. I have all of this fabric still left to go, so I have plenty of fabric to do more blocks. And of course, you know I have a lot of batik. So stay tuned because we'll be making more blocks.